The stars are right, and that means it's time for another episode of The Whisper in Darkness. I'm your host, the Man from Leng. Thank you very much for joining me today. On this episode, I am reviewing the Survivor cards in the Dream Eaters, the 5th Deluxe expansion for the Arkham Horror LCG. There are spoilers throughout if you care about that sort of thing. If you enjoy what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Before we get started, I'd like to thank the patrons of this channel for their tremendous support and Cole Monroe Chitty for his fantastic art. The Arkham Horror LCG community is amazing, and these people have gone above and beyond to bring you content like these reviews. If you'd like to become a patron to support the channel's goals and see your name in lights, follow the link down below, sign up for a tier of your choice, and claim your rewards. That would be awesome. Without further ado, let's get started. The first Survivor card in the box is Miss Doyle, Cat General of Ulthar. It is a 3-cost asset that costs 1 experience point. It has a wild skill icon and the ally creature and Dreamlands traits. Miss Doyle is limit 1 per deck, and she has the following game text. Forced, after Miss Doyle enters play, search your bonded cards for Hope, Zeal, and Augur. Randomly choose 1 to put into play and shuffle the other 2 copies into your deck. When Miss Doyle leaves play, find each of those assets, even if they are out of play, and remove them from the game. Miss Doyle has 2 health, 2 sanity, and she takes up an ally slot. Augur is a 1-cost Survivor asset with a combat and agility skill icons and the ally creature and Dreamlands traits. Augur has the bonded and fast keywords. It has the following game text. Forced, after Augur enters play, discard Hope and Zeal. Action, if Augur is ready, you may exhaust or discard her to investigate with a base intellect skill value of 5. If you discard Augur, this test is automatically successful. Then you may shuffle Augur into your deck to put Hope or Zeal into play from your discard pile. Hope is a 1-cost Survivor asset with intellect and combat skill icons and the ally creature and Dreamlands traits. Hope has the bonded and fast keywords. It has the following game text. Forced, after Hope enters play, discard Zeal and Augur. Action, if Hope is ready, you may exhaust or discard her to evade with a base agility skill value of 5. If you discard Hope, this test is automatically successful. Then you may shuffle Hope into your deck to put Zeal or Augur into play from your discard pile. Finally, Zeal is a 1-cost Survivor asset with intellect and agility skill icons and the ally creature and Dreamlands traits. Zeal has the bonded and fast keywords. It has the following game text. Forced, after Zeal enters play, discard Hope and Augur. Action, if Zeal is ready, you may exhaust or discard her to fight with a base combat skill value of 5. If you discarded Zeal, this test is automatically successful. Then you may shuffle Zeal into your deck to put Hope or Augur into play from your discard pile. No expansion in the Dreamlands would be complete without Lovecraft's beloved Cats of Ulthar, and the Dream Eaters Deluxe expansion offers 4 furry friends for the investigators to purr over. Miss Doyle, Cat General of Ulthar, is the linchpin of the quote-unquote cat deck. As with many of the other bonded cards that we've seen lately, Miss Doyle is limit 1 per deck, and she doesn't do all that much once she has mustered her cat army, besides Catnap in your ally slot. The Survivor class has never had that many options to draw additional cards. Those options became even thinner when Drawing Thin hit the optional list of taboos in the most recent FAQ. If Tommy Muldoon, Calvin Wright, Rita Young, Silas Marsh, and William York want to enlist the Cat General, they'll have to rely on cards such as Madame Labranche, Rabbit's Foot, or Take Heart to speed up the recruitment process. Min-Tae Fan has a leg up on her Survivor and off-class Survivor counterparts, since she can play all of the draw and tutor cards from the Seeker class to find Miss Doyle quickly. If you're serious about pursuing the cat strategy, then you should really consider playing Patrice Hathaway. Patrice is capable of drawing through her entire deck in a handful of turns, so finding Miss Doyle quickly shouldn't be a problem. Make sure you've got the 3 resources to pay for her though, or Miss Doyle may slip through your fingers. Naturally, Patrice will likely have a sizable discard pile too, which synergizes with the abilities on Miss Doyle's troops. Miss Doyle costs 3 resources, which is in line with what you would expect to pay for other Survivor allies. However, Miss Doyle will occupy your ally slot, locking you out of other allies while she's on the table. Survivors have plenty of powerful allies with another on the way in the Search for Kadath Mythos pack, so you should seriously consider investing 3 experience points to purchase a copy of Charisma if you want Miss Doyle. Once Miss Doyle hits the table, you really need to protect her from harm. Miss Doyle is an asset, so she's vulnerable to asset hate, which crops up in nearly every campaign. Fortunately, Miss Doyle has 2 health and 2 sanity, so she's not as defenseless as, say, Anna Kazlow from the In the Clutches of Chaos Mythos pack. Miss Doyle won't survive a snake bite, of course, but she won't immediately die either if she happens to get pinged for a damage or horror by the encounter deck. Once Miss Doyle hits the table, Augur, Hope, and Zeal join the fray. All three cats have very similar abilities, the only difference being the skill that is set to 5. Cards that set the base value of a skill to X tend to be very powerful. Just look at Ashcan Pete's Faithful Hound Duke. Duke lets you set your base combat or intellect skill values to 4 up to twice per turn, more if you get lucky and pull an Elder Sign. Trial by Fire, a Survivor event from In the Clutches of Chaos, which makes the cut in a wide variety of Survivor and off-class Survivor decks, is another example of this powerful mechanic in action. Miss Doyle's troops aren't quite as powerful as Duke, since you may use them only once per turn. However, you do have the option to shuffle the cat back into your deck to automatically succeed at the skill test, and then put another one of the cats into play from your discard pile. That sort of ability is great if you're in a situation where failure is simply not an option, or you're playing on harder or expert difficulty and you want to avoid the variance in the chaos bag. It's difficult to pick the best cat of the bunch because it depends a lot on the investigator and the board state. I'd be willing to argue, though, that Augur is probably the most useful of the three, since discovering clues is the name of the game in the Arkham Horror LCG. Most survivors have below average to average intellect, so the ability to investigate with a base skill value of 5 is extremely helpful if you need to discover clues. The nice thing about Augur is that she's very easy to cycle compared to the other two cats, because you can take an investigate action at any time during your turn. You can't say the same thing about evade or fight actions. The cats have a powerful ability that is almost on par with that of Duke, however they also have a significant drawback. The first cat that enters play is chosen randomly. If I'm spending an action and 3 resources and surrendering my ally slot to a card that I've got to defend, I'm going to expect a lot in return. Unfortunately, there's no guarantee that I'll get the cat I need when I need it. If I need Augur to help me discover clues and I end up with Hope or Zeal instead, I'm not going to be very happy about it. Now I've got to draw into the good kitty, which may be difficult unless I'm playing an investigator who can draw a pile of cards, such as Minte Fan or Patrice Hathaway, or I've got to find a way to cycle the bad kitty, which may be difficult unless the bad kitty happens to be Augur. All of a sudden, I've got a make work project on my hands, and this game is difficult enough without having to jump through a whole bunch of additional hoops just to get my deck to work efficiently. I saw this situation crop up several times at Arkham Nights 2019, and it really put a damper on my enthusiasm about the whole cat deck. Miss Doyle would hit the table, the player would draw a random cat, and then sigh because it wasn't the cat they were hoping for. Then that cat would sit on the table and do nothing, along with Miss Doyle, for the remainder of the game, because there was no opportunity to trigger the cat, and they couldn't draw into the right cat to replace it. That's not much of an endorsement for a mechanic. As much as I love the cat deck from a thematic perspective, Miss Doyle and her army of ferocious felines have several mechanical drawbacks that give me pause. Don't get me wrong, setting the base skill value of a test to 5 is undeniably powerful. Duke and Trial by Fire have proven that time and again, but Duke starts a scenario in play and he doesn't lock up your ally slot. You can't say the same thing about Miss Doyle, who is limit 1 per deck and requires an ally slot. You've also got to defend her from asset hate and ally hate, or her entire army will desert you. Once Miss Doyle hits the table, you get to pick a cat at random, which isn't ideal, especially if you're saddled with a stray rather than the pick of the litter. If I had to pick an investigator to play the cats, it would likely be Patrice or Min, since they have access to enough draw to mitigate the mechanical issues I mentioned above. Other investigators would probably do well to stick with the tried and true Survivor allies, such as Madame Labranche and Peter Sylvester. The second Survivor card in the box is Fortuitous Discovery. It's an event that has no skill icons, the Fortune and Insight traits, and the Myriad keyword. It costs X resources, where X is the number of other copies of Fortuitous Discovery in your discard pile. Fortuitous Discovery has the following game text: investigate, you get plus X intellect for this investigation. If you succeed, discover X additional clues at your location. I was quite enthusiastic about this card the first time I saw it, since cards that let investigators discover additional clues by taking one action tend to be quite powerful. However, after attempting to play this card myself and watching other players attempt to play it, I've come to the conclusion that this card is not all it's cracked up to be. I think the biggest problem with this card is its opportunity cost, which is quite high. Fortuitous Discovery is the type of card that does absolutely nothing until you've satisfied two criteria. That is, you need one copy in your hand and one copy in your discard pile. To have any hope of meeting those two criteria, you need plenty of time for all the pieces to fall into place and plenty of draw to find those pieces, something that survivors aren't exactly known for in this game. If you've got your heart set on playing Fortuitous Discovery, the question then becomes, how do I draw at least two copies of it in a timely fashion? And how do I get one of those copies in the discard pile so I'm ready to play the second or third copy if and when I draw them? The easiest way to get Fortuitous Discovery into your discard pile is to play it for free as part of an investigate action. However, since X will equal 0, you receive absolutely no benefit from playing it other than placing it in your discard pile. Survivors tend to have average to below average intellect, so you will need to commit some cards to the skill test if you hope to pass it, or you can hope to fail and fall back on look what I've found or take heart. Either way, playing that first copy of Fortuitous Discovery will likely cost you an action and some cards for little to no immediate benefit. That's pretty underwhelming to say the least. Fortuitous Discovery lacks skill icons, so you can't dump it into your discard pile by committing it to a skill test. You could commit it to a skill test using a card such as Cornered from the Boundary Beyond, but Cornered is a level 2 card that is unavailable at the start of a campaign. Your other option is to discard Fortuitous Discovery to trigger other effects, such as Ashcan Pete's response to ready an asset, or Wendy Adams' response to cancel and reveal a new Chaos token. I'm not convinced that Fortuitous Discovery makes the cut in either of these decks, though. If Ashcan Pete is looking for cards to discard to ready Duke, there's Winging It from the Depths of Yoth. Ashcan Pete's intellect is below average, but -1 Shroud is often better than +1 intellect, depending on the location. As for Wendy Adams, I'm not convinced that Fortuitous Discovery is a good choice for her either, since you're just one abandoned and alone away from losing your entire discard pile, as well as all that time and effort you've put into setting up Fortuitous Discovery. The other way to get Fortuitous Discovery into your discard pile is to play Patrice Hathaway. Patrice draws a fresh hand of 5 cards every upkeep phase, so the odds that are a copy of Fortuitous Discovery will eventually end up in the discard pile. While it's relatively easy for Patrice to discard Fortuitous Discovery, playing it is potentially problematic. Patrice's use it or lose it mechanic means she has a very small window in which to play the second and or third copies of Fortuitous Discovery. If she happens to be out of position when she draws it, tough luck. The other problem with playing Fortuitous Discovery in Patrice is that she is part Mystic, so she can already play Drawn to the Flame. Drawn to the Flame is free and requires virtually no setup, unlike Fortuitous Discovery. Given the choice between these two cards, I think Drawn to the Flame wins hands down. Once you've got a copy of Fortuitous Discovery in your discard pile, you need to draw it into the second copy before you can reap your reward. As I mentioned earlier, this is easier said than done for most survivors. An off-class survivor such as MINH Fan has access to plenty of draw, but the secret class is all about discovering clues. It doesn't make much sense for her to mess around with a relatively inefficient card like Fortuitous Discovery when she can play some of the most efficient clue discovery tech in the game that the game has to offer in cards such as Deduction and Archaic Glyphs Guiding Stones. Once you draw your second copy of Fortuitous Discovery, you can spend a resource to get +1 intellect and discover one additional clue if you're successful. That seems okay, but you've got to remember that you've dedicated 2+ deck slots to achieve an effect that most other cards can do in one. Compare Fortuitous Discovery to Winging It or Look What I Found, for example. Both will grab you 2 clues while taking up only 1 deck slot, freeing up space for other cards. It's also important to keep in mind that most survivors have average to below average intellect. Investigating with a skill value of 3 rather than 2 isn't going to help you all that much. Survivors with below average intellect are better off trying to lower the shroud value of a location to 0, using cards such as Flashlight or Winging It, or trying to cheat clues with cards such as Look What I Found or either level of Gravedigger's Shovel. If playing the second copy of Fortuitous Discovery is somewhat problematic, what about playing the third? Well, first you've got to draw the third copy, which isn't going to be easy unless you've got access to a lot of extra draw. When you finally do draw it, you may pay 2 resources to get +2 intellect, and if you succeed, you discover 2 additional clues. That's all well and good, but most survivors with below average intellect will still need help to pass that skill test, especially if they want to go 2-up before they pull from the chaos bag. Moreover, if you're playing solo, it's highly unlikely that you will discover 3 clues, since most locations will have 2 at most, so basically you end up paying too much for the effect, and that's not great either. I've taken Fortuitous Discovery for a spin a couple times since its release, and the results have been pretty underwhelming. Setting up Fortuitous Discovery takes a lot of time and energy, which makes it a lot slower than cards with similar effects. If you do get copies of Fortuitous Discovery in your hand and discard pile, they don't really do enough to help most survivors who are cursed with below average intellect. Your odds of passing an intellect skill test are slightly better if you can pull the 3rd copy, but that takes even more time and energy. Honestly, it's just not worth the effort when there are so many better ways to grab clues available. Patrice Hathaway might be able to make something of Fortuitous Discovery since she has draw for days, but she can play Drawn to the Flame, so really, why would she bother? Perhaps we'll see an investigator at some point down the road who can really take advantage of Fortuitous Discovery, but for now, I think my copies are going to go back in the box. That's going to do it for my review of the Survivor cards in the Dream Eaters. Survivors have been blessed time and again with some fantastic cards. Sadly, Miss Doyle and Fortuitous Discovery are not among them. Slapping Miss Doyle down on the table and popping her feline friends in and out of play is probably a lot of fun, but I suspect they'll prove to be too inconsistent and random to make the cut in most investigator decks. Patrice Hathaway might be able to make it work, but competition for that ally slot is fierce, and I don't think Miss Doyle will be able to claw her way into that spot against some of the other heavy hitters in the Survivor lineup. As for Fortuitous Discovery, I'll be removing it from my decks in favor of stronger cards going forward. Discovering multiple clues with one action is great, but I'm not convinced that Fortuitous Discovery is worth the time, the effort, or the deck slots. It's just too clunky. That's going to do it for this episode. If you enjoyed this review, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Head over to Patreon to sign up to become a patron of the channel and support its goals. If you need to contact me, I can be reached at manfromleng@gmail.com. I'm also on Twitter at manfromleng. Until the stars are right, keep your shotgun close and your elder sign closer. Take care out there, and happy investigating.